So we were cleaning up the shop the other day and I came across something that I never really showed or shared on the channel. I'm Tanner, you're watching Adventure Daily, and in today's video I'm going to be breaking down why I think this one piece of gear was responsible for the worst injury that I've ever had. Flashing back to 2020, it was one of the best years of my life. Despite the government trying to shut everything down, I did the most traveling that I'd ever done. I was in the best shape of my life and I was really pushing myself as a rider, trying to get better, trying to progress.
And nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the
cares.
So that's the year we went out to Colorado. So when planning the trip out west, I wanted to be sure that I had the most protection possible. We were going to be riding in a lot of remote locations, so I wanted to be sure to minimize the risk of injuring one of the most vulnerable parts on a rider's body, the knees. Until this point, I had just been using some cheap knee pads that I had since I was a kid. Just 2 Velcro straps and a piece of plastic lasted me almost 20 years of riding. But my knees were not the same as when I was a kid, so I figured it was time to invest in some braces. Knee braces have been around for a long time in many other sports and applications, but really in the early 1980s I found that they became popular in motocross. The main difference between a traditional knee pad and a knee brace is the knee brace not only offers protection, but also supports the joint and prevents hyperextension. God damn, that's a mouthful. Another big difference between the two is the price. Knee braces can get really expensive, so I did a fair amount of research and I ultimately decided to go with a Liat C-frame. They had several models to choose from, but the C-frame gives you this cutout on the inside, which is good for hugging the tank, especially in enduro riding. You can get really good feel on the bike when you're standing up. So I figured these would be perfect for me. I didn't race, I didn't need anything over the top, but these are still a really solid brace. There are a lot of adjustments on these, so I spent about an hour before the trip just making sure they were dialed in and fit my lanky ass legs. First impressions, they felt great. They didn't chafe, they didn't slide up and down, and overall I was satisfied with the purchase. Fast forward through the trip, I wore them every day for a week straight. I crashed several times on this trip, some worse than others, but they really did give me a reassurance that I was doing everything I could to protect my knees. Boy, was I wrong. The trip went well, but a couple weeks later, I was invited to an enduro race in South Carolina called the Little Brown Jug. This was my first and last race that I've ever been in. I was pretty nervous going into this. I am a very competitive person, and I knew as soon as that flag went down that I was gonna give it the beans, and I did. I was doing amazing. I kept up with a B-class rider the entire time. Shout out to Frank. I loved every second of it. The struggle, all the fatigue. My cardio was great. It was freaking hot this day, but I was cruising along. I have a full video of this race and the aftermath and all that stuff, so let's just get right to the point. So this happened in the last test. I was going through a straight section, giving her the beans, letting the 2-strokes sing, and I got a little squirrely in a loose section. My foot slipped off the peg, and I snapped the top of my tibia off. At the time, obviously I didn't know what I did. I'd never crashed initially, but the pain didn't go away and I knew something was seriously wrong. I did end up finishing the race though. Went to the hospital. Long story short, I had a pretty severe tibial plateau fracture and actually tore my ACL, which wasn't even diagnosed at that time. I didn't really tear the ligament. I actually broke the section of bone off that the ACL was attached to. It was by far the most painful injury that I've ever had. The rehab experience, everything sucked. But that's life, man. It is what it is. I'm just now 3 years starting to gain confidence in my knee again. But once again, I've already talked about this in so many videos, so I will just leave it down in the description below. As with everything online, there was a lot of people running their mouth in the comment section. People saw me racing in a t-shirt, assumed that I didn't have the proper protective gear on, even though I mentioned it in the video that I did have knee braces on. What a noob. That's what you get for trying to keep up all of the great things you want to hear when you're at one of the lowest moments in your life. Thanks, guys. With the nature of the injury, how everything happened, the fact that I didn't even crash, I just put a foot down and snapped a chunk off the top of my tibia. Like I said before, I was in the best shape of my life. My nutrition was on point. I was lifting weights 3 to 4 times a week. At the end of the day, shit happens. Life has a lot of luck involved, and I just drew a shitty hand that day. But I genuinely feel that if I didn't have those knee braces on, the outcome may have been different. So a feature that pretty much all of the modern knee braces have is the ability to lock out the joint. So as you can see there, it doesn't allow for hyperextension. And there are some micro adjustments with that, but I was just going with the recommended tolerances. The knee is a very complex joint that's constructed with 4 different main ligaments: your ACL, PCL, MCL, and LCL. While the brace does a fantastic job at protecting all of those ligaments, what it doesn't do is protect you from linear impacts. So how can this cause a femur or tibia fracture? The fact that it's not allowing your knee to bend the way it was designed to. While you're protecting a lot of things, you risk harming some very big things. And man, after what I went through, I would have rather torn every single ligament in my knee rather than breaking that chunk off my tibia. Large bone pain just hits different. So I really do think that this knee brace concentrated that force right into my tibia. I vividly remember this feeling. My leg was just locked, stiff as a board. It was like I didn't have a joint. That's why I describe it as like a pogo stick. There's no hinge in that pogo stick. It just boom right off the ground and chunked my tibia right off. Without the brace, would I have still injured something else? Maybe. Every injury is different, but do some research. Tibial plateau fractures suck. So when they found out 6 months into my recovery that I needed another surgery to fix my ACL, they took a chunk out of the patella and the tendon that's attached to that to rebuild my ACL. In and out, same day. That surgery was a piece of cake compared to the plate and screws that I needed to fix my tibia. Now you can conspiracize about anything, but man, what really got me is when I started to read the comments. Now these videos did well over time, and I started getting more messages and more comments with people who had similar experiences and feel the same way about the brace. It doesn't stop there. There are actually articles that I read from medical professionals that have done research on that very thing. So after hearing other people's similar stories, reading those articles, it gave me a bit of closure and a little bit of anger. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. You can't rewrite your story. You can only continue on and start making new ones. So with everything that's happened and the research that I've done, will I ever wear knee braces again? As of now, hell no. I really do believe that for 95% of the people out there, a traditional knee guard is more than sufficient, and that's what I'll be running from here on out. At this point, I've tested out a lot of different knee pads, and I'll make another video in the future, but for now, I will be running the Leat dual axis. So no lost love to Leat. I still love their products, and they make a lot of other things besides guards that you probably don't know about, so I will have them linked down in the description below. Check them out. So as with everything, different people are gonna have different opinions. So drop it down in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Have you or anyone you know gone through a similar experience, had a knee injury that you'd like to share? What knee guards or braces do you recommend? And what are some other ways you can help protect your knees? If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, protect yourself on the trails, and always remember to live free and adventure daily.